So now I have to apologize. Apparently, I have misplaced the yours and Ashley's videos, and so I'm recording them again and offering you feedback today. So let's go ahead and get started. It's screen share here on the video and share. Okay, so um, let's take a look. First of all, use your last name as well. You know, you did a good job here with the naming, where you've got your name underscore emotive squares, but make sure that it's your full name. I don't. There's no other. Now, forgive me. It's Nye. Is that? Hopefully, that's the way you pronounce your name. I actually do apologize if I'm mispronouncing that. But anyway, you would want to also include your last name with all your stuff, just as a rule of thumb for that. So looking at your pieces, you've organized them like a few others have, and that is in the sort of grid group, um, kind of like a preemption of the joiners that we talked about earlier today. And there's an advantage to this because we're seeing all of these experiments at one time, and it does lend itself to the idea that these are sort of like thumbnails, or these are early sort of design sketches, which they are in fact. This is an excellent um, exercise to do when you are just starting off trying to sort of dissect a two-dimensional space. You've got a design project you're trying to do, and you want to work out some ideas based on some emotive qualities. Paring it down to just some simple squares of a couple of different sizes, an analog thing where you're just scooching them around with your hands, it really makes it, you know, super basic and super intuitive, and you can quickly make a bunch of things and snap photos of them. It sounds like, wow, this is just way too simple, but it isn't. To me, if you can break it down to something that is essential and basic, you can actually sometimes get a lot more out of it. Well, let's take a look here what we have. Move this guy out of the way. We have tension. Now, tension is really, you know, about a comparison, right? Is one element sort of either in comparison to another element, which is creating a tension. And so when we're looking at spaces like these, we're not necessarily creating the tension that we would be looking for, right? Because there's plenty of space here. These people seem, if these were people in an overhead view of a crowd, I wouldn't say that this is a tense scene at all, right? The energy between them is equally divided, right? And they're not necessarily close to one another. Now, to me, you know, maybe what we're doing is we're showing like this person is being surrounded by something, right? I mean, and we could get to that, right? Because I'm an interested viewer. I'm looking for like the solution. I'm looking for tension. However, most audiences are not going to do that. They're just going to try to pick it up very quickly. And to me, from my experience, someone looking at this without any idea that you're trying to communicate a particular thing like tension might not quite get there with that. This one's a little bit closer, this here, because we're getting this energy right in here. But still, you're using the overall space very well. Here, 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 here. All of this is the overall space is being used very effectively. The entire picture plane you're using, meaning you're using the edges. You're taking up all of the space. That's good. This is creating a bit of tension. But down here, this is where you're starting to get to it. This is where you're starting to get to the idea of the tension. And the reason for that, particularly on this one, is you're doing what's good about these, and that is using the entire picture plane. But you're also creating this diagonal, which is being kind of held up by this, right? And that is creating an energy, and that's the energy you're looking for, right? This is almost too formal, because what happens is it creates a horizontal line with the squares. So therefore it kind of pacifies the energy. But this, being that you got a diagonal going this way with the with the large squares, and then you got a cross diagonal happening this way, creates that which is going to give you the tension that we're looking for. Do you see how that can, oh, I'm sorry, we're in congested. How did I get there? Wow, congested looked tense to me. And so, well, now coming back to this one, yeah, this one is kind of giving you some of that tense energy. But actually coming back here, this would be a better example. You've identified it as congested, but this is a better example of tension straight away. Let's look at your lonely. Now again, lonely is a comparative thing as well. Isolated would be just an object by itself. But lonely is a comparative thing. You have a group that is together, and then you have something that is removed from that, which creates the sense of the loneliness there. And so do we have that going on here? Here again, you've got objects sort of surrounding an object, a smaller object. So I wouldn't say this is actually the opposite of lonely. This is probably, surrounded. So it's not quite the lonely that we're looking for. Here we have the repetition of design and then the one object over here. I think it could be improved if we had this object, this smaller element here, turned a little bit so that it is not just away from those other two, but different than the other two, right? You have these two here, and then you have this object that's turned this way, makes this one different than this group here and here. That would have helped with that idea. Coming into playful. Now, what is playful, right? Playful is a couple of different things if you really kind of start to think about it. Is playful organized? Does it have rules like a game? Like we're playing a game which everybody is following, and so therefore there's rules. If you were to look at, like a baseball game, you would see an organization there, right? Everybody is in a certain spot, and everyone's standing where they should. That's play, right? It's playful. And so the other side would be just this free-for-all. You walk outside of an elementary school, and there's all these kids running around randomly with no point or direction to what they're doing. Is that playful? And so you ask yourself these questions when you're starting to think about what would be the visual equivalent of an idea or a topic like playful. So looking at these, are we getting there at all? Is that something that we're aiming towards? So what I'm looking at playful, I'm looking at, is the person approaching it from a game, sort of structured game point of view, or are they looking at it from more of this sort of chaotic randomness point of view? And I'm having a hard time deciding which one you're going for here. And I'd be interested in understanding maybe if there was a third element that you were looking for in terms of playful. I would say, though, and I don't think you're doing it here, so I'm not suggesting by saying this that the wrong direction for most people is going to be pictorial, where you're trying to depict a picture of playful, right? Playful means fireworks, and so I'm making something that looks like fireworks or something, right? Trying to be representational in an exercise like this is totally the wrong direction. I don't think you're doing that, but that's just an aside note, which now that you've had me in class for a couple of times, I take aside notes. The use of space, however, you're doing a very good job of use of space here. Engaging the entire picture plane. See how these objects are kind of all sort of separated? You're creating a beautiful sense of negative space all in here. Beautiful sense of negative space. Look at this shape. That's really great. But is it playful? I'm not sure. So I think we have a little bit more work to do to get to that. Heavy. Now, heavy is all of these are relatively comparative ideas, but heavy, what we want to see is the object that is heavy, and then in order to demonstrate that it's heavy, we need a counterforce that is under pressure, that is being affected by the heavy. So what we're looking for, like in this situation here, is for this little guy down here to be under stress, right? To be not handling the weight. Right now, this little guy's Superman, holding up the world over here, because look how rigid and how confident this little thing is in holding all of that up. It's like, he's just like, no problem, right? Again, like Superman holding up the building. For it to be heavy, we would want to see that thing under stress. Once again, your use of overall space is very good. Very good use of overall space. I just think maybe we need to work a little bit more. Maybe we chat a little bit about how you're approaching these topics. Because while your use of space is excellent, I'm not sure that you're quite communicating, quite getting to the topics, right? Or at least not quite fully there yet. You might be getting closer to them, but I'm not sure that these are illustrating or highlighting, not illustrating, highlighting the topic as well as they could. And the reason I'm like, I wonder why, is because your use of this overall space is so good, but at the same time, it's not really connecting to that topic the way that we would want them to. Congested. Now, congested, I think, of these is probably your most effective, that you're getting to it. Because what is congested? Congested can mostly be defined by movement that is being interrupted or somehow blocked. You know, like a pipe that isn't going through, or cars that aren't quite traveling, or people moving in a direction. So you first want to establish the movement, and then you want to, at some point in that movement, create the sense of some blockage, right? And so I think in these areas, you're starting to do that. Your use of the space is still top notch. You're really getting there. We talked about this bottom one being closer to tension than congested. But something like this, where we got this flow right here, these guys are sort of flowing through relatively easily. They don't feel like they're coming on each other. But this here feels a little bit more like we're kind of in a crowd and we can't quite get through. It's not 100% there, but I think this one's probably in the most healthy direction of connecting the design to the topic. This is communicating. This is what the job is of working in the creative industries. Whether you want to be a painter, or whether you want to be a graphic designer, or an animator, or whoever, you're in an industry where you want to be able to communicate through images, and this is the basic of it. And so we want to get you there. We're gonna get you there. So I would suggest, let's maybe take a time, you and I, and we can just chat about what you're thinking with some of these and how we can get you closer to the full-on, like, okay, now you're getting it. This is how you take a topic and you break it down into a visual. It's not an easy thing. And a few people have done a good job and other people have done a medium job and stuff like that. I can say overall your designs are right up there. But in terms of connecting to the topics, it seems like you're struggling a little bit. And so that's why I want to kind of chat with you and figure out what we can do to get you closer to those topics. Now I'm going to come out of here and let's look at feedback. Now, feedback. I've just gave you a bunch of feedback, right? So what are you supposed to do with it? You know, so you had put up your work forward, and then I've offered you some feedback here, and so there's a gap, surely, you know, where maybe you were thinking, yeah, this is on the right track, and then I come and I'm talking to you about how, well, maybe we need some more work to do on that, and feedback is really going to be about not necessarily this gap between what you want and what the person is perceiving, but it's more about how did the person get to what they're observing. Whether you agree or whether it's like, what would have happened if I was telling you everything is great, you're doing exactly the right job, it would still be incumbent upon me as the viewer to try to explain to you or try to share with you how I'm arriving at that. Because I might be observing things that you're not aware of, yet still coming to the same conclusion. We could be both getting to the same conclusion, but by me looking at your work, I'm getting there in a different way than you had expected. I hope that makes sense. The point is that either way, you want to know how I got to my observation, because that's how you're going to improve as an artist. That's how you're going to improve as a designer. When I say designer, someone who can put things together that communicate stuff. Everyone, there's design in everything that you work on visually. So your job isn't to decide how to analyze the space between what you wanted and what somebody else saw. Your job is to figure out how did the person get to where they are. Because if you can learn that, then you can repeat that. Because if someone's arriving at a conclusion and you can figure out how they arrived at that conclusion by seeing your work, you can make more work that way with the intent of getting them to that conclusion. You see what I mean? So there's a process and there's a methodology to this. This is work. The actual value of what we do as artists has a lot to do with our ability to communicate complex things very quickly and very efficiently through visuals. A complex thing like, heavy, immediately, through a visual, or playful, immediately through a visual. And we learn to do that better and better the more we engage in the process. And so that's what this is all about. I hope this was helpful. Again, I apologize for misplacing, yours, and I also misplaced Ashley somehow. But hopefully this was helpful. We'll continue forward. I'm going to be making videos this week on the three-dimensional pieces, and we'll get those through, and we'll continue to talk about the joiners and other projects that we're working on, which are all highlighting this concept of visual communication and how to make yourself better at getting to a topic, and that's what we're at. So enjoy the rest of your evening if you're watching this today, and we will see you in class. All right, bye bye now.